Welcome back to the Postsecondary Transition podcast, where we have conversations around the ins and outs and everything in between of the transition process for families of students with disabilities. I'm one of the hosts. My name is Patrick Cadigan.
And my name is Meghan Smallwood, and we are both public school transition coordinators.
I'm Martha Goodman.
Oh, no, wait.
Am I the one?
Meghan was supposed to do the lead-in.
Okay,
However, she hasn't been doing the hosting thing for a while now, so every once in a while.
I know Patrick usually likes to take over the reins to the excitement of introducing, but I get the pleasure tonight.
I did it.
Okay.
I did it last time.
Well, this week we're privileged to be able to speak with Martha Goodman, who has held several titles over the year in her career, but we wanted to focus on a tool that Martha created to help families as they navigate the transition process. But before we get to all that, which I'm very excited to talk about, welcome, Martha.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for being here. So I guess we'll just start with a little background. Do you mind just telling us a little bit about you, what kind of jobs that you held, the positions that you held, maybe where you went to college, all that fun stuff?
Sure. So I went to Drew University in New Jersey, and I was a political science major, and that's 100 lifetimes ago. Although really some of the advocacy and the lobbying have kind of come full circle back into my life. I was working for nonprofits for many, many years. Then I had a baby when I was 40, who we named MEIRA, and she happens to have Down syndrome. Very shortly after that, a good friend of mine who had co-founded sort of a grassroots advocacy program asked me to come and job share with her. And I was like, no, I have a job and I have a baby with 300 appointments and no. And she was like, but you will become the best advocate for your daughter. And then suddenly I'm at a new desk and a new job the next week. And now it's over 20 years later. And it's been a wonderful experience of working with families and learning a lot of things. And yes, becoming the best advocate that I could be for my daughter.
I love how you turned your college experience into how it helps you now, because it's so interesting to me. And I know Patrick has lived this when you start with a different career and now you've ended up in a whole different world just because of the way life happens. But it's so cool to see how it all kind of comes together.
Yes, absolutely. I'm very happy to say that in the last Maryland legislative session, through a collaboration with the Baltimore Jewish Council and some others, I spearheaded a new piece of legislation which requires school systems to post their child find service offerings on their websites.
Oh, wow.
And I'm very proud of that. And that really is an example of that full circle from my political leanings back into real life.
That's awesome. I love that.
One of the things that I am curious about, okay, so you took on the role of an education advocate and did so using your background and experiences as a parent with a student with disability. What did being an education advocate mean to you? What did you focus on when you were working with families?
Well, first of all, I always tell families I'm wearing an invisible button that says not an educator, just educated, because I'm not a teacher, I'm not a psychologist or a lawyer. I'm just a pretty well-educated mom. So that's the first thing. The second thing that I tell them is that what I believe is that the baby that you have is the baby that God wanted you to have, and you are the parent that that baby needed. So whatever you think your strengths or weaknesses are, you are the perfect match. So I can help you think through the issues and the options, but you are the expert on your child and the buck stops with you. So my job is to listen really well to the parents of what's important to them and what they're working on, and then explain from my vantage point what I think their options are. And then when they pick it, then help them go full speed in that direction, whatever that direction might be. There have been a couple times, I guess, in 20 years where I felt so strongly that we were not on the same page that we needed to part ways, but that almost never happens.
I feel like that aligns with what we try to do within the school system, because I have so many parents who ask, well, what do you think? What is the best option? What should I do? And just like you said, I am there to present all the options, all the resources, but I always bring it back to what's going to work best for you and your family. And I had a parent one time remind me, that they are going to be that one constant in their child's life after they leave school at 21. So they have to be the ones to make the decisions that they're going to reap. And it's just so important that the parents, and I know how scary it can be and overwhelming, but they really need to have that say in things.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's a big part of the work is to make sure that everyone's understanding one another, both, on a language level, but also on a values level, and to be sure that everyone gets their voice. Everyone gets to say what's important to them around the table.
Right.
Before I took on the role of being a transition coordinator, one of the things that I had learned over being in the system for almost like 10 years, and it was actually one of the reasons why Meghan and I connected in order to be able to do the podcast, was that usually the people that are best at what they do in this role are those people who have had those experiences, but whether it be a child or another family member or a close family friend or something like that. So I always feel like I am the person who is on the outside looking in, but use those relationships and those stories and all of the things that I've heard about. And then that makes me, try to like focus in more on what is important. So I've always found that very valuable.
Well, and I think that comes in handy too, Patrick, when we have these conversations, because like Martha said, the language is a big piece of it. And Patrick will flat out ask, what does that mean? Like, let's break it down. And I think a lot of times families or parents are afraid to ask that when they're sitting at an IEP meeting with a whole table of people who are just nodding in agreement because they know these acronyms and everything. So I think that's so important for the parent to say, I need this broken down, or just to have that resource to break it down and give them the proper language. And then on the other side, I know you mentioned about respect. I know in the 21 years that I've been doing this, that, the respect of a family's culture is very big in how they move forward with things. And I've had to learn, like, they have a reason and their family, like, believes this is what they should be doing. And like you said, sometimes I just have to present it and respect what they decide.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And the more they feel understood, I think the more willing they are to sort of accept what you're offering.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And I know when you build that relationship, like Patrick was saying, they do feel more comfortable to let you in a little bit more and to hear a little bit more about what you are trying to explain to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, and along the lines of asking those questions, now, one of the things, Martha, that I heard you say that I didn't quite pick up on, your daughter's name again is, how do you pronounce it?
Yes. MEIRA, like Madeira wine, but MEIRA.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
And
It means to illuminate.
Oh, I love that.
well, and now the
Mhm.
tool.
You're on to me,
Yeah,
Patrick. You're
yeah.
on to me.
So the tool that you created is the Maryland Education Information Resource and Advocacy.
You got it.
How did you manage to was that intentional? Like, how did you I'm blown away by that. That's
I threw the
brilliant.
dice. It was completely accidental. No, yes, obviously I intentionally created it. So really, things have happened sort of in a backwards kind of way. A few years ago, I took the business name MEIRA in case I wanted to do something with it. Many, many times people have tried to hire me to be an advocate. I work for a nonprofit, and so I provide my services to our target audience at no cost to them. And really, that is the pleasure of my job. It's the honor of my job that I can help families and I don't hear the ka-ching, ka-ching. Because if you go and you hire an advocate, so for example, I call a well-known advocacy organization today to get pricing for a family that needs a specific service that I don't offer, $200 an hour.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So when I'm talking to people and I talk to people at length, ding, 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 ding. And that would break my heart.
Mm-hmm.
So I never wanted to do that. But nonetheless, I took the business name. Then there was a week when I just was having the same transition planning conversations on repeat. And I said to my son, listen, do you think that we could use AI to make a website that would just ask these 10 or 12 questions and, yes, you did it? Great. No, you didn't do it? Go do it. Put it on your homework list and then print out the homework list at the end. And he was like, sure. And literally 10 minutes later, we had like the rough framework of the thing. And then I was like, well, I guess that should be part of my business. So that's why it became the MEIRA tool. MDSnap, which is the domain name, was the name of my nonprofit project for like 17 or 18 years. And then our organization closed and I was hired by the Phoenix agency, arose out of the ashes of the first one. And we no longer use that name, Maryland Special Needs Advocacy Project. But I had put a lot of work into that name and, school systems knew that name. And so I wanted to retain it. So that's where people can find the tool, mdsnap.org.
Awesome.
You say, this is something that I want to do. At the end of the day, what is it that you want to accomplish with this tool? Like, give a brief overview, basically, of what it is for those people who don't know, who haven't seen it yet. What?
Right, absolutely, which is 99.9% of all humans. So it was really born out of the fact that I can only talk to so many people in a day, week, or year. And yet there are thousands of Maryland families that need this same information every year. And many of them really don't have access to the planning. So, your students all have transition coordinators, right? But for homeschool students, for students in parochial and private schools, they don't have access to transition coordinators. They can very easily be out of the information loop. And a lot of those families are the families that I work with. So it was really just an opportunity to put the information out there in what I thought might be a simple way to a wider audience without my necessarily having to reach all those people, and just let it see if it goes by word of mouth, connecting people to other people that need it. What has started to happen, which is really interesting, is professionals have been calling saying, oh, I used it with, for example, there's a friend of mine who is a dad of a child with Down syndrome, who is also a adolescent pediatrician at Hopkins. And he called and said he'd used it with one of his patients and how helpful it was. I hear from my friends, Patrick and Meghan, that, word is spreading among transition coordinators about the tool. So I'm beginning to wonder if that will really be the real way that it's used, people sort of moderating or mediating the use of it. Some people feel it's super clear. Some people feel like, I don't know what all these things are. And obviously that's a challenge, which is why for most questions it asks, need more information? What is this? Right. And hopefully we'll go from there. But you all reminded me of something. One of my questions has been, what else would be helpful on the website? And you just reminded me that when I was in Partners for Policymaking, my project, which really did not fully come to fruition, was to have really a glossary, not just of like the acronyms, but things that terms that young people with disabilities may not be familiar with. You go to a DOORS meeting or you go to some other DDA meeting and they're using terms that the students really may not be familiar with. And so I was trying to put together really a glossary, not just education acronyms, but a wider pool of vocabulary that young transitioning youth may need. And now I'm thinking, oh, you know what? That would be a great thing to add to the website.
Yeah, that would definitely be helpful.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things in prep for this discussion tonight, I will tell you that I was going back through the tool and I was looking at certain pages. And one of the ones that I got to tell, it made me laugh. One of the links was to Wright's Law, and there's a lot of information there. It's a fantastic website, but it's god awful ugly. And
It is really, it's like the world's largest encyclopedia. You you have to know exactly what you're looking for
Mhm.
and go and find it, because otherwise you are just in the ocean. You were just, yeah,
yeah,
completely,
but
completely.
it was actually it was that website, and when I found it, that was one of those where as I'm going through it, I was like, wow, there's a lot of information here, but I think I can make it look better. The reason that I bring that up is because when you had mentioned the glossary, like that was one of those things that there was a glossary of terms from that site. And I was like,
Mhm.
this is terrible. And, you know,
Yeah, it is ugly and it is hard to use, but it is also kind of the gold standard.
mhm,
Mhm.
it is.
And it's the really the go-to training that parents will hear about and be able to access.
Yes.
Many people can go to their public libraries and find, from emotions to advocacy. It's right there. It is really like the household name. If anybody knows a name of advocacy, it's Wright's Law.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. But like you said, it comes down to the language of it all. I think some parents will go to that and they're like, "Whoa, this is too much."
Yeah, I don't normally send parents to the website at all. I'll send them to the books in the library.
Yeah. Yeah, but like you said, with professionals using your tool, like when we brought it, we had a transition coordinator on our team that mentioned it. And so I brought it to the full team. And I think it's a great guide for them because oftentimes there's so many things going on that I think things are forgotten unintentionally, of course, but it's that
Mhm.
guide that they can go and give to parents and walk through with parents to make sure every
Exactly.
milestone is addressed or tackled.
And I think I'm beginning to see that that might be one of the big ways that it's used.
Yeah,
Somebody who has some sort of role to play in the team leads families step by step through it.
right.
Yeah.
And I think it's also helpful because a lot of times, and we've talked about this before, with the caseloads that we have, we're not always present for IEP meetings. So other special educators or team leaders that are aware of it as well. We've always talked about how, especially with our life skills students, the families are often very close and have good relationships with the life skills teachers or the case managers.
Mhm.
And I know that many of them are not familiar or comfortable with transition. So even having them being able to access this at
Hmm.
least puts them on the right path.
Why do you think that is, that life skills teachers in high schools are not better informed about transition issues?
I mean, I was a life skills teacher for 12 years. I can tell you it just was not the information that I was familiar with on a day-to-day basis. I knew bits and
Interesting.
pieces.
Mm,
I wish I had known more, and that's why I got into transition, but I didn't know enough to feel comfortable to tell parents what they should do
mhm,
next, even though I was the one that talked to them on a daily basis. So that is
mhm,
something I know within our county, we're really trying to get our life skills teachers more familiar with post-secondary transition,
mm,
but there's so much already on their plate. I think that's
yeah.
why, they go
That
to transition teachers.
that was
Mhm,
one thing that I would have jumped in on and said, there's a couple of things, Martha. One of the things that you had mentioned earlier that I find interesting is that as fantastic as your tool is and as simple as it is to use, it doesn't surprise me at all that parents still walk away with a lot of questions because transition is so individualized. And when I talk to my life skills teachers, they make it too difficult. The reason that I love your tool, this is where it starts. Like, this is great. Like, let's do this and this and this and this and this.
mhm,
Then the real work also begins when they've done all of that stuff, and then they have to start narrowing it down and make those big decisions at a later time.
mhm. Absolutely.
But I think
Absolutely.
it also tackles, different options because I know when you do have that relationship with a student and a family for many years, you start to form your own opinions too, right? So you as a case manager may believe they need something. The family doesn't necessarily think that, but they don't know what the options are.
Mhm.
So I think having it presented to lay it all out lets them, not be missing out important information.
I try to make it somewhat limited, somewhat targeted, right, for Maryland families, 18 to 22. So you're sort of up to that point, but you're not already in waivers. You're not already launched completely.
Right.
but I see that I really have to think through what else is needed, because, for example, today I talked to individual and his mother he's a college graduate. He has a developmental disability. A lot of things that you all would have talked to him about had he not been college bound,
Mhm.
we now really have to go back and talk about now.
Well, and it's interesting you say that because we work closely with the Autism Society of Maryland, and
Bingo.
I will get many, emails and contacts from them asking about former students that are
Mhm.
now in their late 20s.
Mhm.
And like you said, they're not matched up with certain supports that I don't know
Exactly.
how the information wasn't given properly, or they went on a path that they missed out on stuff, and
Exactly.
now they're trying to figure it out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly that.
Of course, I can't speak for every family, but I'll jump in there because I know that there have been a couple of situations just within the last couple of years for some of my families. Their focus and intent really is just to get through high school. When I'm throwing out that information, they're like, this is great. Thank you so much. You know what? I'm really just trying to get him out of bed in the morning, get him dressed, get him to brush his teeth, and get him on the bus. And then
Mhm.
when they get home, it's then to get to do the homework
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
then, put the clothes away. I just, again, kind of like what you guys were talking about before, that understanding that what families are going through. Like, it's
Yeah.
one thing to say that you have a child with a disability or special needs, but it's another thing to live it.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that's where I
Mhm.
don't understand that. And so I always intently listen to what people are telling me. And this is where we'll pause our talk with Martha Goodman. So join us back here in 2 weeks' time as we continue this discussion.
So don't forget that you can find our discussions everywhere: Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Music, and others. So hit that follow button and you won't miss out. Please, if you haven't already done so, consider leaving a review, preferably a 5-star one. It helps you spread the word and helps us because we know you're listening. Links to the information from our conversations are always in our show notes. Our YouTube channel contains curated videos that revolve around transition, including playlists for guardianship, alternatives to guardianship, able accounts, and more to come. And then finally, check out our website, www.postsecondarytransition.com, full of information and links to more resources. Thanks again so much for your time spent with us, and we look forward to talking again with you soon.